Guys, it's Jasper, and today I am talking about structure. Sort of. If you watched my video from 2 weeks ago, you know that I am currently working on the second draft of my novel, which is very exciting. Also in last week's video, I talked about the 6 steps I am using to get through editing my second draft. So if you want to know more about that, check out the video titled Second Draft Edits, and there's some hashtags, but those aren't really important. In the video I posted 2 weeks ago, I was just kind of starting into part 2 of my process, which is doing quick edits in 2 weeks. Last week I finished on time, which felt wonderful. I had my goal set. I needed to be done by Friday night, and I was done Friday night. Overall, I'm really happy I did that process. Reading my book in 2 weeks was difficult in the way that it was a lot of reading and editing and note-taking and not a lot of time, but it really has given me a good feeling for my work as a whole. And now that I'm at step 3, which is examining structure in my work, doing the 2 weeks of reading was really helpful and has kind of set me up properly. Now this week I am tackling parts 3, 4, and 5 of my plan. And those steps originally were supposed to look like number 3 being break down the structure of my novel onto cue cards. Number 4, examine if that structure works. And number 5, break my novel into sections, which I will then use for my part 6, which is editing my novel by sections. So that is originally what I was planning on doing. However, sometimes what we plan to do weeks and months in advance, I set these goals in December, is not what we end up doing. When it came time, it was Monday morning and I was so excited about starting to work on structure, it didn't make sense in my brain to start with part 3, which was to put out my work on cue cards. Instead, what I ended up doing was I printed off my manuscript, then I divided my manuscript up into the sections I had already created while I was writing it. My book breaks right now into kind of 5 natural sections. Whether those sections will appear, for the reader to see, or if they're just sections I know about, doesn't matter right now, but there's sort of 5 natural sections my book breaks into, so I separated those sections. And then after that, the third thing that I did was then taking those natural sections, so taking part 1, for example, I took that and broke it into more sections. Now that is currently where I am at right now. I've broken part 1, 2, 3 into mini sections. And before I get more into that process, I want to talk about really quickly why I'm doing this in the first place. And there are 2 reasons why I'm breaking my book into smaller pieces. The first one is to help with my current stage of looking at the structure and examining purpose throughout my work and ensuring continuity throughout. By breaking it into smaller sections, I am able to look at not just what's happening compared to having, say, for example, 50 chapters, and I go, okay, in this chapter this happens, this chapter this happens, this chapter this happens, and then I have 50 things to look at. Maybe I have instead 12 mini sections, and I go, the main thing that happens in this section is this, 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 this. And so it allows me to look at my overall structure in a little bit more of a simple and condensed way, if that makes sense. The other reason why I'm doing this is to help me with my editing stage. So next week on Tuesday, my goal is to start my edits. And my goal to finish my second draft of my novel is a date in mid-April. So to help me meet this big goal in what feels like either a lot of time or not a lot of time, right now it feels like a lot of time, what I'm doing is I'm going to establish mini goals. And the way I'm going to do that is based on these sections I'm creating right now. So for example, if I have my due date is April 10th, I can't think off the top of my head what it is, and out of fear, I don't want to say it out loud just yet. So let's say it's April 10th, and I have 5 sections of my novel. And so what I would want to do is then take those 5 sections and assign due dates between now and April 10th, in which those 5 sections are due. And then with my mini sections, I can then assign due dates, and those due dates are going to look more like daily kind of due dates. I need to get section 1, part 1 finished by this date, section 1, part 2 finished by this date, section 1, part 3 finished by this date, right? So that way it's not January, February, March, right? I forgot the months. That way it's not March and I'm freaking out because I'm only halfway through my book and I've only got, you know, a month left or maybe 20 days or something like that. So the little goals kind of help to keep organized on a day-to-day basis. So now I'm going to go backwards just a second and I'm going to move myself actually to where I've been working on the floor to kind of talk about how I've been breaking up my book into sections and again why I'm doing this. We are going to the floor. So earlier I was talking about breaking up my sections of my book into smaller sections, and I want to talk about really quickly how I was doing that. So I started this process by skimming through my chapters and using that little yellow piece of paper to record a brief summary of what the main purpose of that chapter was. Now, because I have just reread my manuscript, this was easy and quick to do. Then, when I felt like there was a break in theme or pattern, I would set those chapters aside, making them part 1 of section 1. Then, I would place the little yellow piece of paper I was using on top of that section, and that little yellow piece of paper would give me a point form summary of each of the chapters in that mini section. Then, I would get a new piece of yellow paper and start again, repeating this process until I'd broken up a section into mini parts. So right here, this is part 1 of my book, which right now is broken up into 4 pieces. Part 2, again, 4 pieces. Part 3, broken into 4 pieces. Then it got messy, which, you know, I wish they could all be broken into 4 pieces. This is part 4 here, which right now is broken into 3, 6, 7 pieces. And then my last part here, part 5, is broken into 5 pieces. So after I separated all my sections, I had clipped them all individually. So you can see the individual sections are done with clips. And then I used a bigger clip just to separate the parts. So then that way I can stack all of these together and not take up all the room on my floor. So the other thing I want to talk about is through this process of going through my work chapter by chapter and breaking it into mini sections, I've also been keeping a catalog on the side, just a separate piece of paper which keeps track of particular nightmares that my character has. Now for each story, there's going to be different things that are important to keep track of. In my story, nightmares are a particularly important thing, and so they were something I wanted to keep track of. So if you're doing this, breaking your story into sections, reviewing what each chapter is kind of about, keep a catalog of the things that are important for character development, part of your main theme or part of your main purpose. Now, the rest of the week, my plan is to break the story down on cue cards, to examine the structure. I have a few ideas of how and why I'll do this, but given that they could change, instead I'm going to try to vlog my process and upload it next week Wednesday. As always, let's be a community of writers who help each other out. Cheers and cheers. To the